bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Good evening. Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Yeah, man. Today is Tuesday, May 19th, 2020. 140 days into the new year. Only 228 days left. Is that right? That's 368 days. My math is off. It's 366. Right? It's leap year. We are live from a bunker somewhere in the middle of beautiful downtown Burbank, California. And I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world. All across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south. Far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the planets. I am your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? How you doing? Is that Grace Jones? Wow. Wow. Grace Jones. Man, oh man. All right. Yeah, just checking out Twitter. That's what I was doing right there. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Hashtag F2B is the sandbox. You can come and check out everything that I am looking at in real time. From Tampa Rick, from Tara, Cassandra, Donnie, John. Yeah, Kevin, Brad. You guys are good. You guys are funny. You're funny with these. Yeah, funny. Mark, Corey. That's a good one. That's a good one. Little Frank Zappa just came in. Yeah, this is pretty good stuff. At JChurch Radio, hashtag F2B right there on Twitter. Tonight, back with this is Gregg Housh. There is, Gregg is our hacker anonymous in residence. That's Gregg. That's Gregg when it comes to Fade to Black. And we get, breaking news on the internet and hacking and all of that. I got the hotline to the guy, right? I can pick up the phone and call Gregg. Go, man, have you heard about this? And he knows about everything. Too, by the way, absolutely knows about everything. So there is a huge story right now, and that is a law firm in New York City, and said by many to be the tippity top entertainment law firm in the world, has been hacked by a group called REvil. And it is huge news. It's huge news for a lot of different reasons. But we're going to go through all of that tonight with Gregg. And over the weekend, they upped their ransom demand from $21 million to $42 million. And they said the reason for that is, with the 750 gigabytes of secret data that we stole from you, in that there is dirt on President Trump, and you have 7 days to pay up. Okay? Or we're going to release it. So that's where we're at right now. We're in a game of, it's a poker match, right? It's poker going on here. And that's what we're going to cover tonight. And why do this? Why do this? Right? Why? And we're going to find out tonight. It is very interesting. And the other part about this, and of course, Greg will be here in a few minutes to talk about it, is that President Trump, like him or not, and we're just talking about the facts here. President Trump appears to not have been a client of this law firm. So what is it in these files, if there is anything in these files, right? We don't know these answers. It's very, very, very interesting. Okay, so we'll be talking about all of that tonight. Yeah, man. Greg spent much of his teens and early 20s evading the FBI. Every time, hey, Greg, every time I read that line, I just start laughing, man. Early 20s, evading the FBI. But it's real. It's a real part of your life, and it's absolutely crazy. You were involved. It's
sort of what happened.
Yeah, well, it's sort of, right? Oh, man.
It was life, man. You do what's next, what's in front of you. You react, and that's where all of those accidents and mistakes took me. Recently, because of one of the craziest days in internet history and the history of the world was the day that anonymous global protest campaign against the Church of Scientology was made public, and you guys woke up that morning going, well, I wonder if anything's going to happen, right? Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. And the next thing you know, you've got thousands of people at different locations around the world all gathering, wearing the Guy Fawkes mask, and the doo-doo hit the fan that day. But check this out. Recently, I was looking up some terms, some legal definitions in some research. And in that, I saw that the Church of Scientology is no longer allowed to use the court system, right? They can't do it. Because they attacked and used the court system to bring down a vendetta on people that they didn't like. That now any lawsuit or anything that they do has to be approved by the courts before they can take a step forward. And not many lawyers want to represent them anymore because of this classification that they've been labeled on. And I would say that all of that is largely in part to what went down back in 2008, man. And you're responsible. You're responsible, but you played a part in that. And that's got to make you feel pretty good. You know what I mean? It does.
It's always weird looking back at that stuff and seeing the part I played, because I know just how nothing we thought it was going to be, how big of a joke we thought we were playing for that week, right?
Right.
And then I know the ramifications. I know what happened, and I know how we felt afterward, and then what actions we took that led to all of this. And so I from the inside, it's way different than from the outside. You could almost look at that as an unbelievably well-planned attack that took down this behemoth of a, we made just a lot of mistakes and miscalculations that led us into a much bigger thing than we had ever planned on being in. And got very lucky that our decisions that we made along the way, as all those accidents fell on our head, happened to be the right ones to, get us where we are now.
All because of, and if you think about it, lulz.
It was hilarious. We made a video to make. We wanted Scientology to believe that the internet itself, like some ominous anthropomorphic kind of a character, the internet was after them.
If they only knew, right? If they only knew.
Yeah.
And, okay, has enough time passed with all of this that the statute of limitations on pizza deliveries has expired?
I mean, on a fair amount of what happened back then, yeah, the statute is up.
So you can admit then that maybe you delivered a couple of hundred pizzas to Scientology?
I didn't deliver any pizzas to people. Some other people might have done that one. I did my fair share of fun stuff, though.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. And we're in such a debt to you and all of your friends, man. You have no idea. Love talking about it. And I don't know if you listened to my rant today, but going back to our conversation that we had a few weeks ago here on Fade to Black, you took the opportunity to just absolutely my brain when we started to talk about fake Twitter accounts and the ability to do that via software and where that conversation, and where that conversation took us that night. But then after that, really, it's weird how everything in the universe is duality, man. It's everything happens in pairs, and you just have to be wide awake to notice it when it happens. Because right after that conversation, this flurry of activity surfaced on Facebook, and I ignored it. I saw it all, but it was talking about these fact-checking bots. And everybody retweeting, go and get into your security, go to blocking, search these keywords, and look at these bots that are there and start blocking them and deleting them, right? So, and I see it. It's all over the place. I ignored it. And today, I was like, oh, okay, all right. I get another message from, a personal friend going, a personal message going, Jimmy, this is actually pretty real. You need to go and check this out. So I did today, and I jumped in, and I was shocked, Greg. I was shocked to see how many, and they don't even hide their names, right? These bots. Yeah. Facebook fact-checking bot. It's what it's called, or variations of that. And I had about a half a dozen of those, and I blocked them, and then I got a couple of new ones as soon as those were blocked. And then I started searching other names, Facebook checker, Facebook check, FB check, checker. And it turns out, as you can imagine, I know I'm not surprising you, but I'm literally followed by 1,000 people named Checker.
Right.
It's like, oh, where did this, and the other bizarre part about this, and again, I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know, but when you get Facebook notifications about a follower, it pops up, right? Jane Doe is now following you on Facebook, right? Yep. Steve Jones is now following you on Facebook. And you get those, but I never got a notification about Facebook fact checker is now following you on Facebook. You don't get that notification. And I was shocked. I had no clue that this was going on. You can assume it's going on to some degree, right? Of course. But is it necessary to have 1,000 face checking bots and people following somebody like me that's never even been in Facebook jail? Why do they do it?
Data's money. The more people they follow, the more stuff they can learn, the more they can aggregate into data sets that do fun things, train machine learning, right? Sell the data to other people. It's all about data at that point.
It is the process in doing this, because Facebook is private, to some degree. It's a publicly traded company, but it's not officially a government-run organization yet. But is this kind of monitoring legal?
It's one of those really gray areas where you've agreed to a terms of service that Facebook will do X, Y, and Z, and then they've agreed to a terms of service, the other, say, user who's now following you, that says Facebook will do X, Y, and Z. You both have agreed to what you will do and what you're allowed to do, and some of their actions fall well within the terms of service, and some do not. Illegal? That's the big question, because is violating a terms of service that you might not have read illegal? That has been tried in court a few different times, and the problem we've run into is the cases have always ended up being settled on a completely different point than that. And so we've never gotten a definitive answer to, just how strong that TOS is.
Yeah, the terms of service I would say any argument laid out in court by any, it could be the plaintiff or a defense attorney, is going to say the exact same thing, and everybody understands it, that nobody reads a TOS. And
there's a whole South Park joke about it.
Yeah.
An entire episode.
Yeah, and yes, that's right. And the reason is everybody knows that they have made the type so small, the legalese and boilerplate stuff so long that nobody is ever going to read it. Therefore, they can bury anything in that terms of service that they want to. You're going to sign it. You're going to click because you want whatever it is that they have, whether it's software, it's a platform, whatever that TOS is, you need it. You're going to click, and you're just assuming that you're in the clear. If anything rises in a legal sense later, they will always say, well, you agreed to the terms of service. But everybody knows that nobody reads a term of service. Right? And it's like this conundrum that we find ourselves in.
I mean, every time I see any kind of a terms of service window or a do you agree to this on software window, I literally just glance at it so I can find the button I've got to click and jokingly say, yep, you can have it.
That's it.
Whatever it is they want, click. Because I'm not reading. That's 3 days worth of reading to figure out whether I'm installing this software or not. No, thank you.
Yeah, that's right. It could say something like, and if you don't pay your $5.99 on time, we will take your house. It could say, and nobody would ever know, right?
Yeah, and then we just don't know how strongly they actually hold up in court. There's been a few cases where certain information in them has worked out in the favor of the company, but overall, we don't have a strong precedent set yet, all the way up to the Supreme Court on just how enforceable a terms of service is, especially based on how it's presented. Like, if your website just in a little pop-up says, we have one, and you should read it, and then, lets you in, does that count as you agreeing to it? Or did you have to scroll all the way to the bottom before the button appeared? We don't have a strong precedent as to what that means. There's nothing like, say, GDPR is over in Europe, where they're controlling how cookies work, right? Where you have to ask people in a certain way before we believe you got their permission. Mm-hmm. Terms of services don't work that way. And so it'll be really interesting when a real Supreme Court case actually happens that actually talks about how they have to show it to you, how they have to prove that you saw it, or it's on your head because you didn't read it and go find it yourself.
And there was a very exciting thing that happened with the EU last year with the way that websites represented themselves for a lot of different reasons. We don't need to go into those details, but the EU stressed, and this involved everybody from Facebook on down. If you had a website on the web, you had to comply with this new EU ruling. And if you're a website like, say, Fade to Black, that is seen around the world and is not limited, and everything is seen around the world, and if somebody in Europe is clicking on your website, you are now forced into complying. Well, that was exciting at the time that, the EU was taking this initiative. But what it forced everybody to do is to rewrite their terms of service. So everybody, right? And so all of these new versions of terms of service went out to comply with this regulation, and nobody read it. Right? Nobody read it. Billions of clicks on TOSs that wasn't reviewed by one single user, and I can guarantee that.
But a bunch of people did see more of those do you accept our cookies notices.
Yep.
But they just click on the button without even reading.
I deny cookies every time. I deny them.
So you're in a very small percentage of people.
I deny them every time. It never stops the website from running. So.
Oh, no. And it usually, in the end, half of those tools don't even work, and, the cookies come right through. And you could run other tools. Like, heck, you could run Brave browser, which is so awesome that it blocks all of the tracking and ads and everything on every website, only, of course, to inject all of its own tracking and ads. Yeah. Sure, great.
Oh, man.
Good job, guys.
Yeah, totally. And now, today, this hacking of EasyJet, which popped up, And going back to what we're going to be talking about tonight, which is this entertainment law firm out of New York. We'll get to all of that at the top of the hour. But isn't it the accepted Internet 101 rule, number one today, that everybody should be understanding, which is never click on a link, right? Never click. When is a good acceptable time to click on a link that somebody has sent you, Greg?
When you know you've got the right security software running, you know the domain that it's going to, and you have copied the link, not just clicked on it, but copied it out and pasted it in, and not pasted it and just instantly hit enter, but pasted it in to make sure that it's not some crazy formatted one that's going to send you off. Because, one of my favorite hacks I ever saw in terms of like getting people to follow links was there was a URL on Microsoft.com where if you form this URL by typing in Microsoft.com/redir.jsp/ and then some other domain name, you would visit it, and it looks like you're going to Microsoft.com because you are. But Microsoft would instantly redirect you to that other website. So people would send you these Microsoft.com links, and you'd think, oh, it's Microsoft. I can click on that. It's safe. No, it's not. Read the whole link.
That's right. Now, how many people do what you just said?
I mean, most don't.
No, nobody
why all
does.
these attacks work.
Right. And so the rule of thumb is, you get an email with a link in it, no matter who it is, what the company is, never click on it. Right? Just
unless you asked for it. Like if you asked for a password reset and then it shows up, copy it, paste it in, make sure that looks legit, and then click, hit the enter button, whatever. But like, if you didn't ask for it and you get a password reset button, don't think, oh, I need to visit that website, I'm going to click the link. No, go type it in and go reset your password just to be safe.
Yeah, I recently I took the initiative, right? I get a PayPal email asking for a couple of specific things, and I don't want to get into the details of it, but to click on this. Well, I was in the middle of something with PayPal like the week before, and I thought it was related, right? And I just looked at it really, really closely, and it was like to PayPal.com, and I looked at it, and then it just didn't seem quite right. And it turns out I went to PayPal.com, and I looked at a couple of things and realized it was a phishing email. I turned around and contacted PayPal. They wrote me back and said, could you please just send us the link, and we want to stay on top of this. And I did. And I sent them the links, and I sent them the actual email itself. They wrote me back and said, thank you. That people do this all the time, or they mimic our site and they mimic the PayPal.com address, but there's always another tag on it that doesn't make it PayPal.com. Very, very well done. Ingenious. Now, in anybody else that would have seen this definitely would have clicked. I can guarantee it because I almost did.
Yeah. And the stuff is so easy and cheap for them to do at this point that's actually one of the funnier things about what's happening right now with the REvil attack. It's how simple of an attack it actually is.
Now, we're going to talk about this when we come back from the break. And was this initiated because they also hit a London-based foreign currency dealer called Travelex, and they asked for $6 million, and this was last year. And they threatened to delete customer data and, the normal stuff, and they wanted $6 million. Travelex paid $2.3 million of the ransom, and and they ended up keeping their services offline for several weeks, and then Travelex caved in, right? Was this stuff the result of a hack, or was it a phishing email that came in and somebody clicked on a link inside of the email?
It could absolutely be both, and I will explain that.
Well, okay, because
and this one could be both, and I'll explain why I'm saying it that way.
Okay, and we'll do that after the break. And then there was another situation. I want to stay on top of this because,
by the way, this isn't the only two. This malware and this team have actually done this many times, and this is a rebrand of another piece of malware that puts the actual length of lifetime of just this malware and the people using it for this specific course of action all the way back to early 2018. And the first group that did it retired after they had hit about $2 billion made.
Now, do you remember the series of towns and civic centers in the Southeast and hospitals, schools, school systems that were hit, and all of it was initiated through malware, wasn't it? It was emails that were sent to the local governments.
Almost all of that was phishing, and all of that was the exact same software, just older versions of the same tool, same source code base and everything.
Now, these tools, they're for sale, aren't they?
It's interesting. They're not really for sale in terms of you can buy REvil or the earlier version, Sea and Crab, or Can Crab, or Gand Crab. Many variations of how you say it.
Right.
But what they are is they're actually run as a service. So this is called ransomware as a service. You literally sign up as, they call them affiliates, but you sign up and you get access to this dashboard as if you've signed up to some other service online, like, I don't know, Trello or some other service where you're playing around in a really pretty dashboard. And it gives you all the tools you need to play with to infect people, to target people. You can feed it email lists. You can feed it IP addresses of networks you want to try. You can do all kinds of stuff. And on this one, the affiliates have some choices on how the money is processed. They can put in their own processing details and have it processed through, say, their own hacked merchants accounts. But the way that most people use this tool is you sign up as an affiliate, and then the REvil team actually, all the money's processed through them and their hacking system and their processing system, and then they take their percentage and hand you your take. So literally, you're just using a service, a cloud provider of ransomware.
That's absolutely insane to me.
Anyone can do it. You don't have to be a programmer to do it either. When you log into the back end of this thing, you're literally just uploading lists and playing with a really simple to use system. I mean, it's as easy to use as Notepad.
No, it ain't. Don't tell me that.
Is.
Notepad, the basic of the basics. That's why I use Notepad, by the way.
Can you copy and paste a list of emails out of Notepad, and can you hit the button that says send?
Yeah.
Okay, you win. You're done.
And what do you think? No, I know. What do you think the age range, the demographic of the users of this is? Is it somebody that is, in their 30s and 40s and 50s that have hopefully matured and wouldn't do anything like this? Is it a younger demographic that quite hasn't learned life's lessons on how to be a responsible person?
There's a direct correlation to how scared you actually are of the law force nearest you catching you or doing anything about it, or how corrupt you think they might be, say, bribable, to the average age of that person. So like in America, usually the average age of people who would actually try and do this and somehow still live here, you're looking at, teens, early 20s at the latest that get involved. Maybe they still keep going for a couple years because they're so profitable, but it's really youth oriented here because you kind of got to be brazen enough, if you will, to do that.
Right,
but,
right.
Look at a Romania or a Bulgaria. In those countries, you're going to see a lot of kids get in, but you're going to see them keep going into their 30s, into their 40s, because either they think they can get away with it because the law is too busy with other things, or they actually think, that they can buy off the law at the point that they're going to get in trouble because of the amount of money they're making.
Yeah, and I'm always fascinated with that, where,
so there's a correlation there with age.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you would think that a town in Romania when, an 18-year-old kid living up the street is driving a McLaren, right? That maybe there's something going on here.
You gotta definitely, if you're doing this in a place like that, you've got to realize that you're storing money for when you decide to move. And you're moving it into other offshore kind of systems, and you're not showing off all your flash and bling locally in your little small town,
Let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, Gregg Housh, and when we come back, we're going to get into it. It's an absolutely crazy breaking story that is happening right now in real time out of New York City with REvil, the ransomware, and the hack on Grubman, and it's crazy. It's an insane story. We'll cover all of it in just a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planets. Hello to everybody listening all around the world. Tonight, our guest, Gregg Housh. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Hashtag F2B is the sandbox. You can also follow Greg on Twitter. It's at Gregg Housh, Greg with 2 G's, and he's got that really cool blue check mark that he's totally against in the system, but you like the blue check mark when it happens, Greg, and I get that. But you can follow Greg, and all of his links are up in our Twitter feed right now. So a criminal group last week that uses ransomware, and it's called REvil, stole 756 gigabytes of data from the systems of Grubman, Shire, Mycelas, I think, and Saks, and has threatened to release damaging documents involving the President of the United States if the ransom is not paid. And they doubled the amount from $21 million to $42 million over the weekend. This is a breaking fluid story. Now, this criminal group has also stated, and this was over the weekend, that Grubman and Shire and Associates had 7 days to pay up, or they were going to drop the dirt on President Donald Trump. Now, Greg, as this story unfolds, let's back up before this, and I'm going to ask the first question. Why target an entertainment law firm?
Because you think they have money, and you also think their clients have money, and you think their clients have secrets. You put all that together, and there's a lot of money to be had there.
Now, they represent Elton John, they represent Madonna, Bruce Springsteen, and Lady Gaga, and they took the opportunity of... you
didn't even mention the big bands they mentioned.
Yeah.
And you mentioned those, and you didn't mention the big ones.
Right.
I mean, Elton John and U2.
Yes, Bruce Springsteen. I mean, it's a crazy client list.
Barbara Streisand.
Yeah, Barbara Streisand.
There could be some fun secrets there.
Yeah, and Bette Midler. Who knows what's
in
lurking.
My interest, they have represented Tom Cruise in the past, and there's supposedly data on him in there.
Now, going back to Scientology, right? I understand the money aspect of this, and you have high-end clients, virtually none bigger than who is represented by this firm. But President Trump himself was never represented or involved with this law firm, or was he?
So that's an interesting story. I mean, it's a relatively short one, but it's interesting. So they have many hacks going over years at this point. And the Trump data is mostly from earlier hacks over the last about year that involved them actually getting into some Mar-a-Lago systems and some other related Trump property systems. The data that comes from this hack specifically that is about Trump is, of course, exactly what you would expect from a law firm that represents all these people. So one of the funniest pieces is David Letterman is represented. I don't know if he still is, by this company, but when he had his show. and Trump went on the show multiple times. There is a bunch of data in his records, supposedly, that talk about him, his team, and the lawyers making sure Trump wouldn't sue them for anything done on the show, because Trump was famous among, the entertainment elite for being very litigious. And so the data that would exist in this data set is about them preparing against him just in case he did, anytime their actual represented stars interacted with him.
Any mention yet? Any comment from the White House, by the way?
So one, they've through some interviews, like Kellyanne said a couple things. They've said that that there's nothing in this. It's a big, to use his word, nothing burger.
Right.
And I kind of tend to agree, actually. Knowing what I know about the earlier hacks and what has been shown on the dark web is kind of proof. It doesn't seem that explosive. It looks like it was a money grab, but that's an initial assessment. Now, today everything has changed. Today they actually announced on their own little dark web blog that a buyer showed up that wanted the Trump data and paid them already and has it already, and they've deleted their copy already. And so they've decided to change up their plans since the law firm has been very clear we're not going to pay. The timeline that they give is that the law firm actually initially offered to pay $365,000 for everything to go away. And then the government stepped in and told the law firm that it is a federal crime to pay terrorists.
Right.
And so who knows? But we know that some cities have paid this, so I don't think they would have done anything to him if they did.
So,
but in a lowball offer like that, they decided to change up their game. So instead, they found a buyer for the Trump data, sold it off, and now the next data that's on the block has an opening bid of $1 million, and it's all of Madonna's data.
Now, we don't know who's purchasing the data, right?
No, they've given anonymity to their purchasers.
That's right. I mean, could it be possible that somebody, a friend of President Trump, stepped in and bought the data to keep it out of the public eye?
For all we know, with what came out about the Mar-a-Lago data that's in it, it's very, it's not special data. It's nothing like super important for the Mar-a-Lago stuff. It was like event lists, who showed up to specific dinner events and whatnot. But it wasn't like, someone you wouldn't expect showed up. It was just business people and whatnot that you would have expected to be there. But maybe one of them didn't want to be in this data dump. And, he has a lot of rich friends.
Sure.
It's kind of his thing. He collects them.
Do we know how much the Trump data sold for?
We do not, but we know that they put an opening bid on the next bit of data for $1 million. So who knows what it sold for, but it probably sold pretty good.
Now, would Madonna be interested in buying her own data for $1 million, right?
Yeah. The question there is you run into all sorts of problems, right? Because, someone like that, sure, you think they have slightly better security, but everyone's human, man. And everyone you're dealing with is human, and there's going to be ways in. So if she herself shows up and publicly buys this, then every hacker in the world that is out there trying to make a buck is going to know that coming after Madonna gets you paid.
Who buys Madonna's data, right? Who buys Madonna's data?
If it was like 92, I'd be saying Michael Jackson would be purchasing it.
Right.
At this point, I have no idea.
Yeah, that is so interesting. That is so interesting. Okay, let's back up. Let's go to last week. How do you think the hack happened?
Well, the tool they're using, its real name is Sodino Kibi. REvil is kind of the flashy, we know Americans can say it name.
Okay.
But Sodino Kibi is the real name. And that tool, we know of at least 2 attack vectors that it uses that are kind of hack-related and semi-automated. And then we know the phishing method, obviously. So phishing is, of course, sends out an email with a link. You hit it, your browser is somehow exploited, and you've got problems. The other 2 are RDP and VPN appliances. So RDP is a protocol used, for remote desktops, which surprisingly are getting a lot more usage these days. So they're enabled at a lot more companies. And it turns out that this group had multiple 0 days for various RDP implementations that would get them right past all your security if you had RDP exposed to the outside world. Now, of course, a lot of those have been patched since this has been going around, but who keeps all their software and hardware up to date? Turns out not many people. And then the other method is they've got an attack that goes up against some common VPN appliances. VPN is virtual private network, and it's a way a company can allow someone at home to connect up to the corporate network and have the network think that they're on the corporate network, that they're sitting in some office cubicle,
Mm-hmm.
And there's complicated ways to build it out with serious infrastructure. And then there's simple little, boxes you can buy, like that little router you have for your, internet at home, that give you a VPN at smaller businesses to mid-sized businesses. And those, one company called Pulse had a couple active exploits. So the TravelX one that you mentioned earlier, that one was actually done, they believe, completely through their VPN device being remotely hacked by an automated tool that just went right through it.
That's incredible, right? And I don't know what is scarier, to have this done by automation and there's nothing that you can do defense-wise. That is terrifying. And then the other side of it is, to me, equally as terrifying, where you have an employee that's a complete doofus that would click on the exploit and the malware inside of an email on a corporate server, right? Where you're logged into the company's network, and you make that click, and then everything goes foul. Both are equally as terrifying, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, one is I don't know. It's interesting because when you talk about the automated tools, you get this this thing where it's just a bot, and that software could have been going after 10,000 targets. When you talk about a dedicated phishing campaign that's coming for you, I don't know, that one always felt a little more sketchy because, like, someone knows my name and is coming after my name.
Mm-hmm.
And that one always is weird to me.
Now, when this gets activated, REvil, let's specifically talk about what is being used in this hack. What happens?
It's really simple. It gives them access to the data that's available there, so they can take it all. Just download it straight through the internet. So in this specific hack, the Grubman hack, they supposedly downloaded 756 gigs of data. That's a lot of data.
Yes, it is.
And then the second it's done and they believe they have everything, it then encrypts all the local data in a way where only putting in the right key, one that they sell you for, in this case, $21 or $42 million, depending on which day they might have acted, putting in that right key will decrypt it, and you've got your data back, and you're fine. And supposedly the software removed itself.
So two things happen then, so I am understanding. One, they lock down your current system. That's happening. So you don't have access to it. And then they've managed to get to certain files, and being able to navigate that to get to the data is pretty interesting to me. We'll talk about that. But they've downloaded those files too as well. So it's not just an encryption key to unlock your corporate network, which is important, but they've also secured their hijack, right? They've hijacked something, and so we have two different things that are happening at the same time.
Yeah, it's completely two almost separate things at this point. One, a group of people now have your data. Two, your corporate network is currently in shambles. So
and in this case, Grubman and Associates, their system right now is locked up. Am I understanding correctly?
I mean, I'm sure that with the security firms they've brought in, they've got other computers up and running at this point. But, so they're not completely offline. But the old systems haven't been destroyed or anything. The FBI, Homeland Security for the terrorism side of things, and a couple security firms are all going over that, attempting to find ways through, to the other side of it. It is not one that's defeated yet, though. A lot of these have been defeated in a way where, like, we can decrypt what they do. So people have made automated tools out there that'll just undo, I think, at least half of these pieces of software. But this one isn't on the list of ones that we've figured out yet. Right. And that's interesting, too, as well. If you get hit by ransomware, first thing you should check is a project named No More Ransom. It's the No More Ransom project, and it's at nomoreransom.org. And they probably have a decryptor that will decrypt your stuff without you having to pay for it, and clean up the mess too. Right. This one, they do not. Right. And so it's not just big corporations here, right? It can be anybody in any phishing campaign that is at home. It's hit people at home. It's hit two-person businesses. It's hit hospitals. It's hit TravelX. Now, isn't there a code of honor amongst thieves on who you attack? Why go after a hospital or an elementary school system? Isn't there a code of conduct? There are a bunch of hackers who, even though they're in it for profit, would absolutely have that code, and there are also a bunch who do not, and that's your problem, not mine. Give me my money. They exist, and there's a lot of them, and there weren't a lot of them until it became easier. There was a much stronger kind of strange ethical code around doing highly illegal things than there is now, simply due to the lower barrier to entry. What was the name of that website again? NoMoreRansom.org. NoMoreRansom.org. Why isn't that link and that news in this article about Grubman? Right? Shouldn't this be? Some editor removed it, or the author didn't care to tell people how to clean up the mess. Yeah, that is interesting. The goal of all of these articles, remember, it's just clicks. It's just how many ad views can we get. Right. I knock on wood. I haven't been dealing with malware or any, of course, ransomware in probably 15 or 20 years. We really went through a couple of things 15 or 20 years ago, and what the time that we had spent trying to fix our systems, it scared me enough that I just don't click on links. No, I just don't do it. I just don't do it. The second half of this. Okay, so let's deal with what is going on now. Are we stuck in a game of poker, right? Where the group behind this hack that is using REvil, they've put down a 7-day timeline here to pay up. What do we do with that? Does Grubman stick to their guns? And are we waiting for one side or the other to call a bluff? In all honesty, I don't think this gets paid for after the back and forth that's happened now. And now that it's been so public that they have heard from the government telling them not to do it because it's a federal crime, it makes it much harder for them to just do it and then apologize later. So I honestly think they don't pay for it. And this group will sell bits and pieces of it until, no one wants the rest. The prices will go down. I don't think they get $1 million for the Madonna stuff, but they might get 100,000 from someone looking to mine for data. Now, how do we protect ourselves? From this one specifically, it's attacking mostly corporate infrastructure types of tools. So, Citrix and other kind of remote tools for RDP type stuff and VPN tools. So for most part, people don't have to worry about this one hitting their home computer. But if you're running even a small business that has some kind of remote capabilities, you might have one of these tools. And for that, you have to keep them up to date. The TravelX one specifically, it got in through their VPN router, or their VPN device. Their VPN device had already issued an update and a patch for this before the hack happened. And worse than that, a security company that's out there doing kind of the white knighting, the good work, the white hat hacking, has an automated tool scanning for these broken VPN devices and found theirs. And they sent an email to them before the hack happened saying, your device is vulnerable. This could happen to you. Here's the fix. And the company never implemented that fix.
Keep
up with your security, especially when a security firm reaches out and says, hey.
Okay, so now if your system is backed up, and I'm talking about in a basic sense, your photographs and your files,
and you've got Time Machine or something like that. Yeah.
Right. And you have that there, and something like this happens, and you know that you've got your system backed up. Does the malware reside somewhere else? I mean, if you erase your drive and reformat your drive, are you safe at that point?
It depends on the other devices you have connected to your network. If those devices have drives, my current system that I'm talking to you through on right now has 3 different sets of external drives it can access. It could have been put on there, and then through, me accessing something, it could bring it back. So for me, I use anti-malware tools, of course. On Windows, you really don't have to get anything better than what's built in. No running Norton or McAfee, please. Those only slow your machine down and add attack vectors. The Windows Defender is fine. On Mac, it's decent itself, but you need to add to it. And on Mac, I recommend Sophos, actually. It's relatively inexpensive. It works good. It's up to date. The couple holes that are involved in this specific type of ransomware attack that could hit your Mac system are stopped by Sophos. So, if you want to go deeper and you're a Mac user, then I would say you load up a tool called Little Snitch, and it stops incoming and outgoing network traffic. And it does a pop-up and says, do you want to allow this traffic? And if you have no idea what that traffic is and you didn't just initiate something, yes, you want to block that traffic.
And, the ability to do all of this, is it beyond most users' technical, because it seems complex, but are these tools that you can use that run automatically and you don't have to get confused?
Yeah, it's all automatic. It's nothing complicated. It just sounds complicated, so people's eyes glaze over and they don't do it, right? But Little Snitch, like if you're on a Mac and you want to run Little Snitch, you literally pay for it, you install it. It's under $100. I think it's like somewhere near $50. And then once it's installed, it sits up there in the little menu bar, and you can just see the ingoing and outgoing traffic in these 2 little green and red bars. And whenever new traffic that it hasn't seen before happens, it pops up and says, this application is trying to do this with this website or this domain or this IP. And you can say, with 2 little buttons there, deny or allow. Now, and it'll remember these things. So you don't have to answer that 500 times because you use Skype all the time and you don't want to keep saying, yes, Skype can connect. So it's just a one-time thing on that answer if you want. You can also actually change a setting and say, ask me every time if you're really that guy. Mine is set, of course, to just ask me once on a lot of those things.
Right.
Really simple, though. Really, it's not invasive. It takes a couple seconds, and every month you use it, it asks you less and less things. Because it knows already.
And with these ransomware type of phishing emails, how do those emails look? Are they using something traditional, like Costco or PayPal or Bank of America? Or is there something else that is going on?
It depends on how targeted the attack is. If it's specifically at you or your company, then usually the attacker will figure out some things about you, what payment processor you're using, what hardware suppliers you're using, what other companies you have deals with. Are you a Microsoft 365 user or are you a Zoho cloud user? They'll try and learn stuff like that, and then they'll try and send you emails that look like they're from those companies. If it's a less targeted one, then it's just going to be, we're going to make it look like one of the bigger companies, like a PayPal or a Gmail or something, and send that and hope that it hits enough people that use that service that, it gets to them.
There you go. Let's take a quick break. And our guest tonight is Gregg Housh. We're talking about this insane hack that has gone down with Grubman and Associates, an entertainment law firm in New York, and demanding a $42 million ransom. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. More with Gregg after this short break on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Stay with us. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. If you've ever missed a live show, you don't want to go through that, right? Live, like now. Just get our podcast. Click on the banners over at jimmychurchradio.com. We have over 1,200 shows there for just $2 per month, including all of the past shows with Gregg Housh. And Gregg, I got to say, if you're going to get the podcast, just get it for Gregg. Just get it for Gregg's past.
Thanks, man.
Oh, man. Okay. I want to get back to specifics here. With the Grubman, well, let's call it a hack. With the Grubman hack, you have to be able to, and I'm trying to picture this in my mind's eye, so I need your help here. You have to navigate a gazillion file folders on their network. How is that done where you can get to the good stuff? Is it because there's a live human, on the other end through the VPN that is just sitting there cruising file folders and clicking through?
Absolutely. There's definitely someone just looking around when they get a big target. I mean, on the smaller targets, they'll have automated tools that are looking for specific file patterns and specific types of network layouts so they can kind of easily automatically identify stuff. But once the basic initial stuff is done, you end up with a human just digging through everything, and you end up with lateral movement. You end up specifically with, once you get on one machine inside of a network, moving sideways to the machine and the cubicle next to it or over to the server room is usually the easiest thing you could ever do. I mean, it's once you've gotten through the deadbolt on the front door of a house, walking into the kitchen. Moving laterally in a network is dead simple unless they've spent a lot of money. Like one of the best tools to track and deal with fighting off that type of lateral movement is a tool called Darktrace, but you're not going to have a good setup of Darktrace for under $150,000. So if you can't afford that, have fun. Is
depending on the size of the company and the amount of resources that are available, shouldn't every company have a guy like you on staff?
Well, I mean, again, that depends on size, right? A 4-person company couldn't afford to have a dedicated cybersecurity guy, IT security guy, CIS, whatever you want to call it. But at a certain size, I mean, definitely 50-person and above should have a security person on staff, at a minimum 1 person.
What does this do ultimately to the reputation of Rob Grubman and his law firm? Right? You're Bruce Springsteen, or if you're U2, you're assuming that Grubman has got the stuff on lockdown.
You are assuming that, but I mean, I understand that people will assume that and that it will hurt the reputation, but it wouldn't have mattered which lawyers they were using. This would have happened about the same. I mean, Grubman, the news has come out over the last few hours that it has been pinned to one of those Pulse VPN servers, the Citrix hack. on Grubman now. So they know the vector. That's an attack that's been available to be patched if you had a security person paying attention for 6 months. So they're bad. I would think in a sane world that makes them legally actionable to people like Bruce Springsteen because they weren't maintaining proper security.
Mm-hmm.
But, that's the thing that bothers me the most. Not that they got hacked. I mean, it's pretty hard to stop a dedicated person at this point. But that it was so easy because it was a well-known and already patched hole. That should hurt their reputation the most.
And now we've all seen the movies, right? A lot of them you're a consultant on. We've all seen the movies where a virus, a file, malware, ransomware, whatever you want to call it, is embedded in a picture, not just a link or a file. Is this approach real?
What do you mean? Just that, any old file that might be doing one thing could also be doing a second thing?
Yeah, like an image, like a JPEG.
Sure. I mean, a lot of files are traded on the internet that are JPEGs that you've hidden a zip file in. And if you just unzip the JPEG, like literally you go to the command line and type unzip and then file.jpg, whatever the file name is, it'll realize, oh, there is a zip file here, and unzip the files out of it. But to everyone else, it just looked like an image file. Sure, that type of stuff works. There's also, various forms of packing, which is ways to kind of encrypt your executable. But one of the tricks that they'll use is they'll pack your executable with a second executable, one that the system should have, like one we mentioned earlier, say notepad.exe, right? And yours will piggyback on, so whenever anyone runs Notepad, it also runs yours. Most malware detectors are going to catch those these days, but that one is kind of one of the tried and true that's been going on since the early 90s.
And you mentioned, and I always found this interesting that Apple tends to be a little bit safer. Right, that for whatever reason, the respect of Steve Jobs. I don't know.
No, the reason has always been that they've never had. Well, once viruses became even less a form of profit and more just something that the hackers were doing for fun, and then of course into profit. There wasn't enough profit there because there weren't enough people using them, especially people who were in big business that you might get anything out of. So, you weren't going to break into NASA through their Apple Macintoshes. You were getting in through mainframes and PCs and Windows machines. Right. So, the Mac was never a big target. I mean, there are people out there who think, that that's still the case. And, since Apple has been taking, good gains in market share in the recent, last 8 years or so, really good gains, they've become a target. And the first, real ransomware, I mean, I say real because it was kind of a joke. It crashed more than it ran when it infected you. For the Mac actually came out in 2016. By 2018, there was decent enough ransomware. It's still not on the level of the Windows ransomware, but it does what it's supposed to, and it works most of the time. And it'll attack Mac machines if you click on the wrong link.
Now, is there? I want to talk browsers in just a second, but what about operating systems like Linux? Is that safer, or is it just that less people use it, so the hackers don't care? It's one of those how big of a target surface you are and how good you've secured your system. But there have been multiple Linux ransomware attacks in the past. There was a giant one called KillDisk. There was another giant one called Lilocked. Lilocked hit thousands of Linux servers. I mean, just thousands of servers. It was an automated auto-spreading Trojan bot that did its ransomware campaign. KillDisk was a little worse because Lilocked, at least they figured out how to undo, and the ransomware team actually still existed. KillDisk was badly programmed, and it couldn't actually decrypt. It itself couldn't decrypt. So even if you somehow paid the ransomware and then tried to decrypt it, you weren't going to get through. Oh man, that sucks.
Yeah, that one was horrible.
The
Linux ransomware attacks really started in late 2017, around there. So again, Windows ransomware attacks had been going on for a few years by then. So Windows was definitely first, but there are now solid code bases for Linux attacks and solid code bases for Mac attacks. It's just still more profitable to go against Windows.
Now, going back to the movies, we have all seen the different agencies and private security firms that have the ability to trace internet traffic, no matter how complex it is, even if it's on the dark web. We've seen that with a case like REvil and Grubman. Is it possible to chase this back to an apartment in Belgrade?
It would really take a mistake on their part at this point on the team. I mean, if the numbers are to be believed by the big anti-malware teams and the big security teams who have been hunting for these people, and even the numbers that our government have put out, when you add them all up, it's at a minimum this malware strain has been used for almost $2 billion in either ransom or fraud. That's enough money that the right people who would hunt you down are paying attention, and they still haven't caught them in somewhere, depending on, there's rough estimates about when this strain really started moving around, somewhere between 2.5 to 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. So given that kind of a time frame, that means there's at least 2.5 years minimum that this has been on the just out there, and it's made that much money. If they were dumb enough to make mistakes, they would have made them already, is usually the case. They're obviously not the ones going down to get a coffee at the end of their street and bragging to the barista that they're going to buy a new Bentley off of that American they just screwed.
Right.
It's going to be a tough one. They're going to have to slip up.
Is it a situation where there is the cyber aspect of the forensic detective work, but then there is old-fashioned police work, right? Human bodies out there, chasing these guys down. Ultimately, is that how they're going to get caught? Kind of like Dead Pirate Roberts, if you think about it.
Yeah. One of the interesting things I think of is, there was that first strain of this specific ransomware as a service that ran up, almost $2 billion, and then they went and retired before the new people took the source code and made this new version. But that first version, in their kind of exit message, as they said, we're retiring and closed down the service and sold the source code off, their exit message said that they had spent the last, 6 months taking all the money and putting it out into various business ventures in ways which would not only wash it, but make their new ventures clean. And all their new ventures were above board, normal businesses that, had nothing to do with illegal things. And so, depending on how good they actually washed that money and how good their accounting is on all of that, that might be a vector. Taxes are a lot of times like the best vector to find these types of things. Because then you get the forensic accountants in, right? And they find interesting things. So it's, again, I think it's going to take a mistake to find these people. But if they get caught, I would say the first strain gets caught because they make some kind of a mistake that outs that the funding of whatever their new businesses are didn't come from the right places.
Do you think that we'll find out who is behind it?
I don't have high hopes, actually.
Yeah.
They've been doing this for a while. I mean, there was another hack yesterday by the REvil team on a completely different company. On Sherwood, I think it's like Sherwood in Forest. They're a big food distributor that do like all the truck driving for Kroger's and Albertsons and all those other big ones. So like the data dump that they got out of them is going to be tons of like contract data and tons of vendor data from all those big giant companies.
Now, isn't Sherwood, that's the trucking company out of Indiana, right? They're like the biggest trucking company in the United States?
Yep.
Holy crap.
They got hit by REvil, and it looks like it happened somewhere, days ago. And they've been talking with the same kind of intermediary group, Covewave, that was trying to get Grubman to pay too, and was going in between them and the hackers to try and, orchestrate the deal. The same group is trying to orchestrate with them, but it's not going to happen. The cybersecurity firm who's kind of doing a lot of the teardown of this and figuring out what's really happening, Dark Owl, already has copies of the conversations and whatnot, and it doesn't look like any deal's going to be made there. So it looks like, again, this is going to be just old style police work and some cybersecurity work to see if they can track anything. And I don't think anyone's getting paid off of that one.
You just recovered from coronavirus. What is scarier to you right now? REvil and this type of ransomware that is part of a network on the dark web, or a real virus, right? that has crippled the planet. What would you be more scared of?
I find this a really tough question because, like, when I was sick, I had my worst fever really hit. It bounced between 101 and 102, but it stayed there like constantly for a week and a half. Like, I did not drop below that, and so that's the part that really sucked. But I've actually hit 105, 106. I had scarlet fever when I was young, and actually, a lot of times in scarlet fever, they have to let you actually pass. Your heart and brain stop, and then they revive you with the defibrillators to pop you back, hopefully, because it breaks the fever, right?
Right.
So, like, I've had fevers take me before, and this one did not get that bad. But still, I mean, when it comes to the online stuff, you could say I'm lucky. I'm so damn poor. They have nothing to take from me, so I'm not too scared of them.
Take
my identity. You will find that I own a TV and a bicycle, not even a car.
Right, and
nothing else.
Exactly. Now, I have often said that I have nothing on my computers. I don't care. Right? Ransomware. You lock this up and you encrypt it. Good riddance, right? I don't care. A, I have backups. B, I have 3 or 4 laptops leaning against the wall that are ready to go. I can be up and running in minutes, and I really honestly don't care. I'll buy another computer and I'll back up my files. Everything else rests in the cloud, and I'm not worried about it. But that's not the case with most people. And when this malware starts going rampant, and I thought a couple of years ago that we were running into situations in a global sense, Greg, where any city, Paris, Washington, D.C., New York, any integrated system could be held, in jeopardy for ransom, right? And that's where we're at. Yeah. It's only a question of when. Right?
I mean, people should use this as the wake-up call to actually do proper rotated backups. Like you said, have another device ready to go if it's that important to you. If you work from home and you don't pay rent if you miss a few days, you better have a spare device. I mean, for all you know, your CPU dies or your power supply goes out or something. I mean, unrelated to even the scary stuff, like, you should just have a second device in the first place if it's that important to you. But the backups, you bring up an interesting point there, like, make sure that you have backups, but that you're doing your backups in a way where one of your backup drives every other day is not actually plugged in. So if your machine gets hit, nothing can hit that drive. Then you bring up your new fancy machine that's leaning against the wall over there that you haven't been using yet, plug in your backup drive. You're all set.
Now, going back...
The old one you can set on fire, I guess, at that point.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you know what? Usually you need a new computer anyway. So, right. Back in 2000, I'm going to guess here, 2014, 2015, Sony got their cyber attack, and all the fingers pointed at North Korea. And it was over the release of, what was the name of that movie, Greg? Help me. Yeah, The Interview, right? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So that went down. Everything was allegedly North Korea. I'm not so sure, looking back, that was the case. Still could have been. I don't know. But what would stop a country like North Korea or Iran or Pakistan or another player to jump on the dark web and sign up to the REvil focus group, right? and take advantage of this?
I mean, absolutely nothing. I mean, we know that North Korea does this stuff. we believe we can attribute at least 1/3 of the Bitcoin hacks that took big hauls of Bitcoins out of the exchanges as they get hacked to North Korea taking the Bitcoins. So no, they do stuff like this all the time. I mean, you got to remember, if you're talking North Korea, you're dealing with a country that makes a fair amount of its GDP by filling ships with crystal meth to ship around the world. So like they don't really have anything stopping them from doing any of this.
The fear, whenever I see a really good crime go down in a movie, right, where I go, wow, okay, well, they just laid the groundwork for any criminal, any terrorist on a really creative idea on how to get things done. And then these types of hacks.
You're looking at it wrong. You always have to look at it as what is the piece of the puzzle that they just showed you that they specifically left out because the lawyers wanted to make sure whatever their thing was nerfed enough that no one could just follow these directions.
Yeah.
You look for the hole and see if you can honestly fill it. If you can, then great. You've got a great plan. But usually there's one step missing, and it's very much on purpose.
Yeah, exactly. But it's the germ of the idea, right?
Yeah, totally. Don't convince people they can do it.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And so with Grubman, and I can't believe Sherwood, I didn't read about this yet. That's pretty shocking. But people read this, and if you've got a low moral compass, you read this and you're like, well, this is actually pretty easy for anybody to do. Is this letting criminals know how to go and do things?
I mean, sure, but every news coverage of I just, robbed a bank, which, you get that coverage every day, says, oh, you can rob a bank. The only thing they do on those is they don't really show much news coverage of and they got away. They only show the coverage when the guy gets arrested because they don't want to encourage it. But everyone covers everything that could teach you how to do all kinds of bad things. It's no different here.
Now, when we come back after the break, I'm going to talk to you about the vetting process that criminals have to go through on the dark web, right? You can't, obviously, they have to vet their criminal brethren.
Oh, absolutely.
They have to vet them. You can't allow the FBI or the NRO or whoever in the NSA to just sign up for, you can't let the keys to the kingdom go, right?
Right.
Criminals are vetted.
They are.
When, if I was on the dark web, Greg, and I'm not saying that I ever have been or that you have ever have been. So let's just talk in hypotheticals here.
Of course.
But if you, Greg, were on the dark web and you wanted to buy some really good heroin, right? Or some fentanyl and get it delivered, you just can't sign up to have that done. There's a whole process involved, right? You have escrow of Bitcoins. You have your background is vetted, and all of this has gone through. It has to work that way.
It used to be so much easier, and every year it gets harder because sites keep getting attacked, right? And the people operating them keep going to jail. So the vetting process has gotten stronger and stronger as it goes. So now it's to the point where a user of the site that's already vetted and one other person from the site that's at least like a moderator have to both know you and invite you and vouch for you. And then you have to go through a bunch of hoops of answering a bunch of questions that they think vet you about not doing this. And then you've got to submit almost a resume of stuff that you've done in the past that prove that, you're just like them.
Well, and if you're a heroin user, this process could take a long time. You can go into withdrawals, right?
I mean, yeah, depending on, which one of the sites you're trying to sign up to, that could be a 2-week process. So if that's your only source, then you could be having serious problems. It's like I was talking to someone at the very beginning of all of this COVID stuff, and they were yelling that here in Massachusetts, all the alcohol was still available. All the stores for liquor, they were all open, and what the hell? How are those still? And I was like, if this lasts long enough, people with alcoholism will die in their homes if they don't have access to it. It is actually better to have them still having access to it, even though we know that's a disease, than having them clog up the hospitals right now. And they were like, oh, now I get it.
Now, with Bitcoin getting closer and closer to somehow being normal, I think everybody now knows what a Bitcoin is, right? And it's how easy is it to do a Bitcoin transaction? If I'm new to Bitcoin, right, brand new, how easy is it for me to get a Bitcoin, open an account, and go out and buy something with a Bitcoin?
Very. I mean, it depends on kind of how strong you want your platform to be. Like, if you're looking for something that you would look at more like your bank, then you're going to someone like a Coinbase, a U.S. company that kind of handles things in a very bank-like way. There are 100 other sites you could go to that, as they get easier to access and quicker to give you the Bitcoin, the less trustworthy they happen to be. So you got to kind of figure out where you want to be. But I mean, there are websites you can go to right now and just, with a credit card, buy Bitcoin. And by the time you've signed up to the account, bought it and spent it, you're, 20 minutes in. 20 minutes in.
And so for these ransomware guys out there, these transactions are done in Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, but getting, large sums of Bitcoin is a whole different story. You've got to get someone with that kind of Bitcoin to sell you. So you need one of the institutional sellers to do it. And a lot of times that works more like, say, moving big stocks, where you've got to become, Bitcoin's version of accredited. Someone like a Coinbase gives you an account that only lets you play around with up to $5,000 until you've done that for a while and proven some things and submitted extra documents. And then maybe you can play with 20. And so on and so on. So suddenly having to pay $1 million ransom in Bitcoin, they're going to look at you funny.
That's
like,
that's
we
why
ain't giving you $1 million worth unless you can really prove to us what you're going to do with it, and we're okay with it.
Right.
So you can go find it though. I mean, again, it's one of those things. If you really know what you're doing, you'll find $1 million in Bitcoin that they'll sell you. They're just going to charge you a little extra fee for how fast you want it.
Let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, Gregg Housh, discussing this hack with Grubman and Associates in New York City, demanding $42 billion in ransom. How they got it done? How do you pay the ransom? We'll follow up with everything after this short break. This is Fade to Black. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, our guest, Gregg Housh. Talking about the recent hacking of a New York law firm by the malware REvil. They stole secret files and are demanding a ransom of $42 million and were threatening to reveal dirty laundry on Donald Trump. But apparently, Gregg has let us know that information on Donald Trump has been purchased. Now, I would assume, Gregg, that was purchased with Bitcoin. How the one thing about Bitcoin that is so talked about is that it is anonymous, no pun intended, and its use is virtually untraceable. Certainly, if you want to go down that road, your activities are virtually invisible. Is that actually the case when we talk about Bitcoin?
No. Bitcoin is not anonymous in itself, and as itself, and even its initial documentation hasn't claimed to be. It has been many other people in the community who have claimed that it somehow offers that ability. You have to buy the Bitcoin. So right then and there's money. That's the worst trail you can ever have, right? So depending on how you've bought it, like here locally in my town, there's a Liberty place that I can go to, and I can actually buy Bitcoin with just straight cash without giving my name, and they give me a code. But that goes into an app that's on my phone. So right there's some identifying data already. And if you've got, you're the NSA and you've got some malware on my phone, you know what I just did. So, it's not truly anonymous in any of these types of senses, but can you anonymize it? Sure. There are ways to make it really hard to track if you do a lot of extra technical stuff. Most of these start with tools called tumblers, where it's really interesting. Like, let's say there are 5 people who need to spend Bitcoin, but they don't want it to be tracked to them. They've got 5 addresses that they need to send the Bitcoin to. Bitcoin's these big long strings that are called addresses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they all send to the tumbler with the metadata of Tumblr, could you send this to that address? The Tumblr then takes all of their Bitcoin, mixes it up together, buys other Bitcoin, sells other Bitcoin, trades it in for Bitcoin it already has, whatever, moves it all around 100 times, and then sends some other random Bitcoins off to those end results. And because it's moved through so many different addresses and so many different owners, by the time it gets to the other end, saying that one person paid that one person is much harder. Now, there are many Tumblr services out there, and some are way better than others. Some have been defeated, some haven't. But that's the easiest way to do it, because Tumblr services you can actually just like sign up for and set up accounts in hours.
Now, if we're talking about $42 million in Bitcoin, how easy is that for these hackers to receive and to stay invisible is the best word to put it?
It's very hard. Most of the major ransom payouts that have happened in Bitcoin have been traceable to a point. Like, they see the initial address they've sent it to. There are all kinds of tracking tools out there where you can look at the blockchain and see, that money went into this one and then from there into this other one. And then from there it was split among these 3 and so on and so on. And if you follow it through the chain, you'll usually find that, it was 40 million and 5 million ended up in this one exchange in Vietnam and 5 million ended up in this one in Germany. And then it might end up going out to 50 other people. So again, one of the things that can happen with certain cryptocurrency type transactions is certain addresses, coins that go through them can get marked as dirty in a way where the exchanges all know they've got a list of coins that are obviously either from hacks or from ransoms. And so they can even, once those go into their accounts, if let's say you show up with one of those coins on Coinbase, like someone sends it to you, they'll know that came from a ransom and they'll be able to alert authorities if they feel like it. I mean, that's on them, really. That we have an account user that looks to be a normal guy that doesn't look to have had anything to do with it, but somehow has one of those coins. Maybe you want to follow back from him. Things like that. So there are trails everywhere. It's pretty hard, but again, the hackers behind this one have been really, really good. Again, the numbers that we're talking about is they've extracted $2 billion.
Now,
so, they're good.
They're
tumbling, they're obfuscating, they're switching to other cryptocurrencies. They are really good. And it takes a certain level to be there. Like, I would be surprised if one of these people wasn't trained by like a government to be on one of their hacking squads.
The ability to do this is one thing. And then the exchanges, on the other hand, want to be part of the REvil Bitcoin community and what it represents, but they also want to be right. Well, of course. And then others want to be legitimate, like a normal bank and have that image. So are they ready and willing to share information with different law enforcement authorities around the world? And does that tarnish the reputation for the criminals that are
willing? Most of them aren't set up in a way where they're just going to offer up the information out of nowhere. They try to stick to the letter of the law. So, Coinbase here has certain reporting responsibilities due to the regulations of the financial institutions they're interacting with. So they do have some absolutely regulated reasons that they have to report certain things due to just how strong the financial regulations are. But for the most part, if they just know that this looks fishy, they're not just going to call the cops on you. They don't want their reputation ever tarnished by the fact that they initiated the action. Depending on what type of action it is, they might fight a warrant for information, or they might not fight that warrant and just let it go through. But either way, they kind of want the government to at least take that step so they can have some deniability and never actually working with the government, willingly.
Now, we were talking before the break, and I'm going to get back to it. The vetting of criminals, right? This is something that has to happen in the dark web. And for the dark web to operate effectively, that has to go down. And I know it sounds strange, but there has to be a certain amount of honor amongst thieves. And it has to happen that way. And most of these guys on the dark web are absolute criminals to their core. It's their job. Well, criminals will also screw other criminals. And that is happening on the dark web probably as much as anything else that is going on out there. It is that crazy of an environment, isn't it?
It is for the dark web ones. You've got to know someone who knows someone, or work your way up. So you might end up on some of the more plain text ones. Like say, if you don't want to go over to the dark web, but you want to kind of start playing around with the lesser forms of this, you'd go to raid forums. It's literally at raidforums.com. Right there. Go have fun. There's multiple data breaches there for sale every day. You can sign right up. But you'll earn a record there of someone who's actually done pretty good for a while, and then you'll make friends with a few people on the dark web, and by the time you're looking to kind of take that next step and really move up in your criminal activity, you're going to get two of them on a site to go to the admins and vouch for you. And it's never one. It's always at least two that have to vouch for you for the good forums anyways, for the good sites on the dark web. And I say good like in terms of their quality for the criminals, not that they're doing good. They are not. So you've got to have vouchers, and then you show up, and usually you're in some kind of a restricted state to start where you can't just show up on day one and start like selling your wares. You've got to, actually hang out, talk to people, get a feel for things, post a lot before they really start allowing you to have more features and use more of the stuff. And
how far does the vetting go? It's one thing to build relationships and build your reputation, but does it go beyond that? Or do they look into your background?
Some do. It depends on kind of the level. There is a dark web forum that is specifically for managing the collections of stolen merchant accounts, which is what people use to, of course, charge all the credit cards that they get in the big credit card dumps they take, like, the giant TJX hack or any of those. On the couple forums that do that, the vetting to get access to that level of the game, which is where they're playing with, the millions and the billions, that takes real world vetting. That takes multiple users vetting you. That takes you proving a big thing that you've done in the past to them and showing up with what you might refer to as a gift. Something to give them that they don't have yet that they could really use, you've got to go through a lot. And then on those, they'll do a lot of other things. They'll want to know who you are. They'll want to do background checks. They will verify that you aren't. It's almost like, you can't have a judge that currently is sitting, well, you're not supposed to, that has serious debt outside of normal debt. Like a mortgage and student loans are fine. But if you've got a sitting judge with gambling debt, even if it's a legal type of gambling or something, that's a problem, and they usually are supposed to be sidelined until that's cleaned up, right? There are certain cops in like the LA County sheriffs actually watch their credit ratings. And if they drop below a certain level, they actually do an internal investigation to find out what exactly is going on, that this guy's having this much financial trouble, because financial trouble is leverage. And so they'll do that level of checking before they'll let people into the really deep parts.
Now, I'll make a confession right now to everybody that is listening. I have never gone and checked out the dark web. Okay? And now, with all of my research and Greg and I talking over the years and all of the information that I have collected, and I know how to do, I'm scared. I'm absolutely scared. I don't want to go, right? So I haven't done it. But then through that research, Greg, I have read many, many times that the dark web, the Tor browser, and everything that was set up was a government project, right? That this was a way to do things more efficiently while the regular www was being set up and those protocols were there. But that was the start of the dark web. And can you confirm this part of the urban myth behind the dark web?
Well, okay, sure. So Tor started out as a government project. The initial code base, something, that complicated, started out. And it was basically given out as open source, and a group of open source people kind of coalesced around it and started building on top of it. The government stopped developing it, and the code base was gone over, head to toe, every bit of it by the outside engineers. And it's at this point, years and years, decades away from, any actual government input on it. The more interesting side of things is not that it in itself started that way, but when you look at things like Tor and other systems like that, you have to look at the connections. So Tor does onion routing, which means, it encrypts and then sends to the next one, which encrypts, and so on and so on. And then at the end, it decrypts the layers and, the layers of the onion kind of, right? Mm-hmm. So it doesn't just go from you to one server to the place you were trying to go. It goes from you to another, to another, to another, with the hope that when it comes out the other end and goes to whatever web server or whatever communications channel you were trying to talk to, they can't tell which server it entered on, and thereby also tell who you are, right? How many of those nodes are run by people that we trust is always my question. And that's the one that's been the hardest one to kind of nail down, because there were some periods in time where there were large percentages of Tor nodes in places where you would expect there to be government-controlled servers. And at a certain point, having that many nodes leads to forms of attack that allow you to ID which node they came in on. And if they came in on a node that you controlled and you were able to ID it was that node and where they were trying to go, then, by that point you can ID the person. So that was always my fear. It doesn't look like they've actually pulled that attack off yet in any real way. Most of the attacks that look like they have happened while someone was also using Tor were usually down to that user making 100 other mistakes. When I go to visit a website on my computer, I type in letters. I don't type in numbers. But those letters have to be turned into numbers for my computer to get there, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say I'm on the dark web and my web browser isn't routing those requests to turn that domain name into an IP address, into the numbers, through the dark web. It's looking at them in the plain text web.
Right.
Then what you've done is you've leaked a little bit of data there. While all of your transaction stuff is going to happen over the dark web, you're going to connect to the website, load the website, and all that fun stuff over the dark web. Your request to get an address out of a domain name might have gone over the plain text web. And at that point, you've made the mistake of requesting something from a server that could easily be compromised. Like if you look at a couple of the drug markets that were online on the dark web that users got caught on, the feds took over the server after busting the person running them.
Right.
And then they would put a piece of code on the server, letting it still run, letting people still buy and sell and everything. But there was a piece of code that would ask your web browser to grab a file from a web server. Now, every website does this, and every website has extra code. Like when you're looking at Twitter and you're following Jimmy here, and it reloads the screen, right in front of you without you clicking the reload button, that's because JavaScript in the background requested new data from the server.
Right.
So they would include a piece of code like that on the dark market, on the drug market, and then the user who thinks he's doing everything over the dark web, suddenly his web browser goes and makes a request over on the plain text web, and they got you. They know you were on that site. They know exactly which second that request was made, and they know which user logged in at that exact second too. And now, since they're controlling that server right now, they have its transaction history. They know what drugs you've bought or sold, and boom, you're arrested. So when you go through these types of systems, you've got to not just use Tor. You've got to use Tor in an even more secure environment than you're used to. So you want to not just run Tor browser on your normal computer where you do your normal everyday stuff. You want to boot into a computer, into an operating system that was built to secure your Tor connections and only do things like DNS or requests or anything through Tor, and make sure that no script can break out of that sandbox. So there's Tails, which is kind of the most widely used one, that you can just download and run off a flash drive and boot into it. And when you're using Tor browser and something like that, that info doesn't leak and they don't get you that way.
Now, if that request happens, right, and you're back into going in the opposite direction, you're going off of the dark web, you're going out of the Tor, back into the surface net, right? Yep. How easy is it? Well, obviously, they're going to have an IP address at that point. They may know exactly where you're sitting and your street and your town and so forth. If you're using a VPN at that point with that request that is happening, does that protect you from a hard ID?
Again, it depends on, what data is available to them when they make that request. So if you paid for that VPN service with your own credit card and that company is an American company, then they're going to see your IP address as that VPN, realize they're getting no more data at that point, call up the VPN company and say, do we have to get a warrant or not? The VPN company, if it's an American company, is going to say, go get the warrant, but then we'll have the data ready for you. So if it's a foreign company, then it really depends on which one you are, which one you're using. So like for me, I like to use one that I know isn't going to give up the information because they're in a country that doesn't make them save the information if they don't want to. So perfect-privacy.com, of which I have no deals with. I just literally love them because their service. They do not log any of that information. So when the law comes asking them a question, they physically can't give it to them. It does not exist anywhere. So it really depends at that point which VPN provider you're using and which country they're located in.
Now, tell me before we say goodnight, and we can certainly continue this conversation if you want to. We can go into overtime. But for most in your world, you guys are all using encrypted text. Your phone service, this is just what you guys do, and I understand that. And in fact,
default.
Well, yeah, it's true. And me texting anybody in this community, I always it's difficult because I don't use encrypted text services. Is you don't just turn on a computer and are signed into Chrome and going at life each day. That's not how you run, is it?
No, not exactly. But it also depends on my needs. I will definitely just boot the machine and hop right into my web browser, my normal one, if I'm literally just going to go read an article on a news site or something like that, and I don't have any specific plans. But, if I even think I might stray from that into things that I don't want tracked even lightly just for personal privacy reasons, then I'm going to boot onto one of 20 different flash drives I have, depending on just how strong the needs are. And, if the needs are really strong and this is something that I could never, ever have tracked back to me, then it isn't happening from my house or a computer that I own that's mine.
Well,
It is happening somewhere else out in the world.
this is, everybody is yelling for overtime. So there you go, Greg. You're not going anywhere.
I don't need to sleep.
Sleep is for sissies.
Remember, I'm all the way out in Boston here, so for him it's 3 hours earlier. For me, it's 12:30 at night.
Yeah, but Boston is shut down right now, so you guys have nothing but time. Explain to me again when you say I would just boot onto one of 20 USB drives. Explain to me that process like I'm 2 years old.
We'll take like Tails as an example. Tails is kind of the default for anyone wanting to play with Tor in a slightly more secure environment. There are others. There's Whonix, which is WHONIX. There's Cubes, which is QUBES. So there's a bunch of these, right? And depending on how secure I need to be, I go down that chain, right? So Tor is for when I really just want to protect my privacy when I'm using Tails. Whonix is when, I might be using the dark web to go research some things, but I just don't want it to be in my history because I just don't need that kind of heat. And Cubes is for when, let's just not talk about it.
Right. And so I'm holding up, just a USB drive to the camera. Yep. So you're saying that Tails resides on the USB drive. Yep. Right.
And depending on what type of computer you're on, you stick it in and you just any old thing. And, again, depending on what computer you're on, you press a different key during boot to make it boot off of it. On the Mac, you can just hold down Option while it's turning on and you hear the beep and it'll pop up a little thing that'll show your normal Mac hard drive and it'll now show the flash drive and you can select it instead. On Windows, depending on what, boot options key your machine has, a lot of times it's F9 or F12. You'll just hit that while the computer's coming on and it'll pop up a menu. Would you like to boot into your Windows or do you want to boot off a CD or a flash drive? Click the flash drive,
Oh, fascinating. Absolutely mind-blowing. Let's take our break right here. We'll head into some overtime. Gregg Housh is our guest. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. This entire conversation tonight has been rolling around the recent hacking of a New York law firm with the resources and the malware REvil. They stole secret files, are demanding a ransom of $42 million. How this stuff gets done, how the money gets washed, what the transactions are, and how it gets done are everything we are talking about tonight. We'll be right back more with Gregg Housh in overtime after this short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Gregg Housh. Tomorrow night, Robert M. Schock, our Go Beckley Tepe special event. Thursday night, no fader night, no open lines. We've got Linda Moulton joining us, and it's going to be great. So we've got 4 great nights, and what a great conversation tonight with Gregg Housh. Greg, I've learned so much, and so many comments from our audience in Twitter tonight, and I'm watching. And, man, we've got a lot of hackers, man. We got a lot. This whole Tails thing and booting off of a flash drive and things. Man, I didn't know anything about this. And everybody here is talking about different ways to do it. And I just feel like I'm a little late to the party. And this is something that's been going on for how long?
I mean, decades.
Oh, man. Why am I just now? I'm just now finding out about this. It's like the Twitter.
I mean, Tails is only like 11 years old, but there were other systems before it.
Now, going back,
but still, that's a decade.
Yeah, going back to the dark web and these criminal hackers and organizations that are there, they are assuming that they know how to navigate the dark web and they know what's going on. But certainly governments and state actors out there understand this too. And they are they have storefronts and forums and things that are out there to attract those criminals too, right? You just don't know what is safe.
I mean, yeah, but the bigger issue there is that you have to deal with, especially on the dark web, the hosting, right? And you have to deal with the money. You know, there's got to be both. And those are always the vectors that they find you at. They find out where your servers are, or they find someone doing something a little crazy with money, and after monitoring and tracking and all that fun stuff, they end up catching you messing up and find out that you're the guy running that website. What the government has done for the last, 5-6 years is keep the websites running, even if they're doing highly illegal stuff. They did this with a child pornography website, left it running, left tons of kids getting exploited. So they could catch everyone. They left it running for months, and it led to this giant argument about, was catching that many people more important than the few months of saving the kids you could have done? And it was a tough argument, and people fell on both sides. But in the end, I mean, what the government's plan of action is attack the sources we can attack, and finding the hosting is a little easier than it should be for a lot of these people, because most of them go into this not being super security conscious before they start something on the dark web. It's not as hard as it sounds once you start looking into it. And so people get into it that aren't prepared. And then they'll attack the money, which is what they've always done. I mean, look at Al Capone, right? They got him through his taxes. They go after the money. And once they've done that and they've got control of the site, then they're going to leave it running and even expand it. They'll add features just to make you think that the old people are still running it. And then it'll run code on your machine because you're visiting it happily and you're saying yes to any request it makes, of course, because you think you're safer on the dark web or, whatever. And then they've got you.
Yeah, and explain to me how this works in that Amazon is probably the largest provider of internet services in the world. Not only do they sell products, but information is their bread and butter. That's what's keeping Amazon running, is their information services and their server farms. There are other large ones around the world, certainly, but the servers that are running the dark web, are some of those part of Amazon's network or Google's network or, these other large... Not
usually. A lot of times, they'll have terms of services and other things blocking that kind of traffic from running on their servers. A lot of times there's the smaller hosting infrastructures or other, external data centers, which are kind of almost a dying breed at this point. When you wanted to put up a server in the early 90s, your only choice was something called co-location, where you'd go to one of the big data centers that had everyone's servers, even in the beginning, Facebook had servers sitting in one of these, right? Mm-hmm. And you'd bring your hardware and walk right in, and they'd say, here's the rack you put it in, and you'd get a key to the front door and a key to the rack that your server's on, and you could walk. When I had mine there, I used to walk by Comcast and RCN servers that I could literally reach over and touch all the buttons on if I felt like. Right. And everyone was just co-located in these big facilities because they had the power, the internet, the air conditioning, and all the other stuff you needed. And those types of places are kind of a dying breed because you have these giant companies like Amazon with AWS and Microsoft with Azure, and IBM have a cloud now. Everyone's got a cloud now. Google with their GCP, their Google Compute Cloud, and you can just rent time on servers from them, and so you no longer have to go into data centers and manage your own hardware and deal with your own hardware failure anymore. And depending on your use case, it's good or it's bad. But because of their actions, there are far fewer places for you to co-locate your own servers at anymore. And that means there's far less places for people to put their dark web stuff up on. But when you're thinking about just Tor or anything like that, there are a surprising number of those nodes at universities because the universities will have college students in their various courses, be them programming or cryptography related classes, all on the CS courses that are working on Tor as part of kind of, be it their final project or just part of something the school is actually a piece of.
So the dark web, and I remember reading the data on this, where you have the surface web, and I would read these data numbers, but the things that are underneath that are ginormous numbers, dwarf what we actually know, and the amount of web pages that are out there and websites of us normal users, and what is actually underneath that. It's two different sets of numbers. Where are all of these servers located that are storing all of this data in the dark web?
In those types of co-location facilities. Normally, dark websites aren't heavy trafficked, so they don't need a lot of hardware. So, large dark websites run on still individual servers, unlike, a large, surface web site might need multiple servers to be running, might even need multiple data centers to themselves to be running. Most sites on the dark web are small enough that one small piece of one server will work. So you can fit hundreds of these sites on a server. And so there are groups. There was one called Freedom Hosting, and Freedom Hosting was kind of what you would expect out of the name. Anything and everything goes. I'm not looking at your servers, and don't tell me what's on them, was their policy. And a group of hackers actually got really angry at the fact that, because Freedom Hosting had that as their way, there were everything from some terrorist websites that were, actually plotting, different attacks through sites that were obviously hosted on Freedom Hosting, to some actual child pornography sites got onto their network. And they got hacked and everything deleted by a group of hackers at one point. But accidentally, the hackers didn't even mean to do this. It exposed enough information about the hosting of it that the feds actually went in and caught that one. Freedom Hosting 2 came up, and basically the exact same scenario again. So, it is tough to be one of the guys trying to maintain those types of servers. But if you wanted to put a website up on the dark web, you can host one at home. I mean, you set up a Tor relay at home, and then, you can get an address that just points right at your home computer and run one at home. Now,
we've also heard a lot about these different web farms and server farms that are out in the middle of the ocean, right? That are in these remote locations, Iceland and Greenland, and there's probably one in Antarctica by now. How much of this is real?
I mean, there aren't any in Antarctica that I know of that aren't just actual government research places. But Iceland has a big set of data centers on it because the energy and the air conditioning both happen to be really cheap there, because you get the geothermal providing power, and then honestly open the windows for the cooling when you've got it far enough north. So there's a few good sized data centers in Iceland. The other kind of offshore ones, like when you're talking like the more joke ones, like Sealand there and others, they've never been profitable enough to stay up and running long enough to really make any kind of an impact.
And the access with something remote like a data center in Iceland, how easy is it for how much do they protect that information? If the United States wanted access to that server farm, does Iceland give it up?
Iceland is actually really strong on their security measures and on their privacy measures. So it's really interesting because our government has actually violated what they consider their sovereignty twice in the last 15 years by us having actual federal U.S. agents go and conduct business in Iceland, in Reykjavik, and do it without informing the local government that they were doing it, and then coming home, and Iceland only finding out about it through the news. So I think relations there aren't that good, and you also have to remember that the Pirate Party itself holds a lot of offices in government there. There's a lot of powerful people there who are all about privacy and security.
Right. And so when we look at something like the group that is using, REvil, and that collective of individuals that is there, isn't it easy to pinpoint exactly where this is occurring and where that server is and who is doing the keystrokes into that server?
That server could be in your bedroom, sir.
Yeah, no, that's my point.
I'm just saying, like, that's literally how little they know. Let's say there is a server in Iceland. Who's to say that that's the actual endpoint? That could just be, the thing running the VPN that is actually, being connected to by another server in Romania that's being connected to by one in Iran, and that one happens to be where all the real data is. And when our FBI asks any authority in Iran for data or logs or anything computer related, they usually just get flipped off. Once, funnily enough, they actually televised themselves lighting a FBI request on fire. They actually took like the piece of mail they got and lit it on fire just to show how much they care about our requests for help.
Yeah.
So if you could ever find hosting in Iran, it's a pretty safe bet that you're in good shape. Now, if you do something that is against their local laws and whoever's nice enough to give you that hosting gets caught, you've hurt someone, but you haven't hurt yourself. You aren't getting in trouble for it.
Now, how strong
makes you a horrible person?
How strong is the encryption, not only with Onion technology and Tor, but VPNs and internet traffic in general? How strong is that encryption? Can it all be cracked? And is that information in use by the NSA and the way that Snowden has presented it?
The encryption is getting a lot better. Tor's encryption, the Onion encryption itself hasn't been broken. There's been some mathematical attacks that have gotten through. Like, if you're looking at it in that kind of Onion way, like imagine there's 7 layers to this. There have been some mathematical attacks that theoretically break through a few of the layers, but not all of them. As the supercomputers we have get more and more powerful, and as quantum computing, gets ever closer, it's going to get easier to break some of this older tech. So we've got to stay up and ahead of it. We've got a lot of people to thank for bringing SSL to the wider web in a way that it was free and that it was easy and accessible. There was a day only, a few years ago where the amount of websites on SSL doubled literally in one day.
And you're texting now. Who are you texting to? You're tweeting.
I was not tweeting. I was texting a friend who just asked me if I actually had room for, in her own words, a dirty hippie to spend the night.
Oh,
to which I said, I do not. We are under lockdown, and I don't need some random stranger from some other state who's in town and can't find a hotel in my house.
Because I've been watching you tweet throughout the show tonight. And
sure, but that I don't type so loudly, like, please go away.
This is where if you are up to no good, like these REvil guys, no matter how complex your system is anybody safe? Is everybody safe on the dark web when you have so many variables like Bitcoin, emails, the tags that are left behind in the malware itself? Is anybody safe? That can they get away with it?
That is literally up to the person doing the act itself. If you're doing something on the dark web that you don't want to get caught for, you getting caught is 99.9% on you. The human always makes the error. The encryption is there if you use it right, and that takes, some studying. The tools are there if you use them right. I told you that one story once about how they literally tracked a guy who bought pieces to the computer he was using in another state while wearing a hoodie with someone else's credit card at a Best Buy, but that Best Buy video footage is how they tracked back to the hacker. Again, he made a mistake there, which literally he looked up at the camera and his face was perfectly clear on it. And then he didn't use some special software that would have made that vector non-existent. you have to do some work to maintain your own. You can't expect that just because I'm on a supposedly encrypted system on the dark web, where the people on the other end definitely don't want me making mistakes. They want to remain safe too. You can't just assume that because of those things, I'm safe. You've got to take a lot of extra steps on your own. And depending on just, what you're doing and how distanced from your real identity it has to be, I mean, those steps aren't just on the computer. For me, that means I literally drive pretty far away from my house to a place where a computer's sitting that has never been at my house, that is rebuilt every year out of spare parts from machines that I find for cash, that never have my name. It has never had my name typed into the keyboard. Like, that thing is so not me. And then I randomize things like the MAC address and everything else. And I have a tool that will break, simple Wi-Fi passwords. And I go around until I find one that it can break. And then I use that for the thing I need to do at that point. And I, of course, boot off of cubes at that point because I need a really secure system. So, like, the level of security you provide for yourself is how easily you're going to get caught.
So you are saying that if you don't make a human error, you can get away with it. The technology is there, so it would be impossible to get caught if you don't make a mistake.
There are ways to do it where you're not going to get caught. Again, I still don't think those initial people who literally took $2 billion are going to get caught. The ones who made the initial code base that now has been repurposed for REvil. I don't think they're going to get caught. I think they got away with it and are retired and having fun on an island.
Wow, that's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. In the future of, and I discuss AI a lot, and it's not AI, it's not artificial intelligence that freaks me out, because we're going to get to that point at someday, and that thing is inevitable. But it is the other side of it, the basic machine learning and the quest for artificial general intelligence. A few steps below, pure AI and singularity. It's the quest that is going on right now with multiple companies around the world. When we look at AGI and the machine learning that is happening right now, right? AGI is still a few years off, pure AGI. Yep. But the other elements of this are certainly in place. Do you fear that? Do you think that there is enough control in place, or is all of this just fear porn and there's nothing to worry about?
I think the right controls can be put in place. I think, we live in a capitalist society that is a little driven by the wrong forces at sometimes. So the right motivation has to be there for them to actually put in that work and that effort. There are some groups working on that effort. There is, the artificial intelligence group that's kind of a bunch of company founders and college professors who have come together to set up some basic structural ideas of how we define the places that AI is allowed to play and what access it gets to certain types of data, and whether true AGI would ever be given full access to the internet where it could do whatever it wanted. There are people trying to build sandboxes for the AGI to be locked into. Whether that works or not, we just don't know. But I'm very much science minded, very much into the research, and it's kind of like the singularity, the idea that at some point that AGI, those computers, and then, with quantum coming up, we're going to get to that point where the computer is smart enough to build a computer on its own that's smarter than it is. And it'll design it and hand us the plans. And, by the 50th iteration of that, which should be only the next morning,
right.
It's now building itself without us having to build anymore. And a few days in, it's the best possible physical thing our universe could actually allow for, because it keeps getting that much more smarter than itself. And what does it do? And there's the argument of, well, who would plug that machine in to begin with? I would. Let's go. I want to see what it does.
Well, and this is the trippy part about this, where, and I'm speaking now to the average person. You need to listen to what I am saying. Once that line is crossed with AGI, and you need to really think about this. If you're in a conversation with somebody and you're having a normal back and forth, but you have the ability to think at the level of an AGI computer, you are able to think about your answer in that conversation with the calculations of a year. You can think about your answer for a year. You can contemplate your brilliant response and have a year to respond to it. But that year of thinking happens in a nanosecond. Wrap your head around that. Think about that concept. That is what AGI is. That is nothing to be messed with. Our concept of thinking and conversation and testing and results and theories and things, this is in a real-time human brain. When you then apply that, like you just said, Greg, where a computer can go and rewrite its own code and develop a better version of itself in a couple of minutes, right? By the next morning, you got a room full of things that you have no concept of. That is what AGI represents, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, we will definitely, I don't think we're able to predict what happens when AGI appears, no matter what we really wrap around it. So I go with my wife's idea on this one, and she says anything that's even slightly robotic at this point, let alone towards AI, be really nice and hug it. Just treat it nicely, so when they remember in the future, you were one of the nice ones.
That you changed the oil, you were respectful, and you never let the battery drain.
Make sure they remember that you treated their ancestors well.
Absolutely. Gregg Housh, you are the absolute best, my man. What's the launch date on the new website? What's the good news?
Probably about the end of August right now.
Do you have the counter?
I'm hoping for a little earlier than that, but no later than that.
Okay, there you go. And the podcast, is that going to wait until the website is launched?
It's going to come along with it, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Greg, keep us posted. I look forward to our next conversation here on Fade to Black, but I always learn something, and tonight was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, my friend.
Absolutely. Always happy to be here, man.
Go and cause some trouble. I'll talk to you soon. Gregg Housh, and Gregg's website and the links for it are over at jimmychurchradio.com. There is a counter that is there announcing when everything is about to kick off. But what a great conversation tonight. Thank you so much, Greg. I want to remind everybody that this week we did a little bit of programming changes. Thursday night is not Fader night. We're not going to have open lines. Thursday night, we have Linda Moulton Howe here. Tomorrow night, Gobekli Tepe, our favorite subject always here on Fade to Black. Tomorrow night is our annual Fade to Black Gobekli Tepe special event with Robert M. Schock. You're not going to want to miss that. And there you go. With that, I am going to get out of here. I got to thank Gregg Housh for another great conversation tonight. Tomorrow night, Robert M. Schock. And, of course, Thursday night, Linda Moulton Howe. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Camarion. The show is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Kevin. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitola, Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and syndication is KGRA, The Planet. This broadcast owned and copyrighted 2020 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Until tomorrow night with Robert Schock, I want everybody to be safe. Gobekli Tepe.